let's start tonight by saying a little bit about how the event works and introduce you, Keith, and then hopefully get on with our discussion, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Well, welcome everyone who's watching and everyone who's in the chat room. It's great to have everyone along tonight. Tonight, the only two of us have got sound and vision, and I guess that's you and I, Keith. We can hear and see each other.
yeah,
And I guess you don't have access to the chat room today, Keith, but I guess I can see the chat coming in
yeah.
and I can put some questions or some comments to you.
Great.
We've got Sandra or Saz in the chat room, who's our very experienced chat room facilitator. If you've been
That's
around, yeah, so we're saying hello to Sandra.
yeah.
Um, and Sandra can take pictures, not take pictures, take comments, take questions. And Christy's also in the chat room picking up comments and questions as well, which is great.
Hi, Chris. Kia
Okay.
ora, Chris. Yeah. We've got a slight delay on the line, I think.
Right, so there's a bit of a delay between you and me, Keith.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a little bit more of a delay between us and the chat room. Okay, so
Right.
everybody's saying hi to you, Keith. We've got Annie, and Annie likes hugs. We've got Jeanette and Kathy. We've got Christy. We've got Dahlia, who says she's from southern Israel. Helen and Jay, Kim, Carol from Boston, Roger, and Simone and Steve. So thanks everyone for joining us so far. And
Great.
I'm sure if anyone else wants to get in the chat room with us, that's great.
Great.
So to introduce you, Keith, I guess you've been in the helping professions for about 30 years now.
Yes.
Qualified and registered as a psychotherapist. In 1993, you co-founded Temenos, which is an independent, person-centered psychotherapy training centre. You are the author and editor of more than 10 books now, and if anybody wants to scroll down the page, they can see the books that Keith has been involved with and can buy them right now if they want. I'm sure you have no objection to that, Keith.
That's great.
Yeah. And Keith, you're coming to Scotland to do an event later on in June, which is a lecture and is a workshop, and the tickets to that event are available just below the video. So if anybody wants to sign up right now, I guess we wouldn't object to that either.
That's right.
So you've been in New Zealand for about a year now, Keith. How are you enjoying life on the other side of the world?
Well, it's lovely. I think just in this last month, I've begun to sort of realise what a big thing it is. I think when I came here, I was very much wanting to sort of face this way and, sort of have the new life I guess that's a sort of part of the sort of push in terms of immigration. But I think it's interesting. I was late for a meeting here for the first time, and it was because I was at home and I got the time of the meeting wrong, basically. But it was because I was watching the results of the British elections, and it was the first time that I turned the television on here deliberately to watch something in Britain, and then got the time of the meeting confused, and so was late, and I was terribly apologetic. And I thought, actually, that's the first time that I've looked back rather than sort of looking here. So I don't know if that's part of a sort of, well, I think it is part of the sort of normal cycle of, being an immigrant. But there is that sort of almost, even though you've chosen to have a new home, there's an old homesickness somewhere. So I'm sort of curious. It's a very interesting. I almost feel like I'm a very interesting research project about the nature of and the experience of emigration and immigration. But prior to that, my family and I are delighted to be here. I should say my wife and I are delighted to be here. My kids didn't have much choice in the matter, but they're also settling in well, which makes me feel more settled. And it's great. New Zealand's a very interesting society. I think that part of some of the reasons that we moved here, we've met and enjoyed and so on. we're making new friends, and missing old ones. So it's an ambivalent thing. That we're very pleased to be here and still pleased to be here and feeling settled, and at the same time missing mostly people about the UK. So this is also very interesting in terms of coming back to the UK for a visit, and of course it will be the first time I've come back as a visitor rather than returning to the UK from being abroad. So that's also rather interesting and feels a little strange at this stage.
Yeah, so I guess it's been a big transition for you,
Yeah,
and something about being able to look back, perhaps the UK around elections, that gives you a sense of where you are in that transition.
that's right. Yes, and not being involved and not voting and those sort of things, and being very much focused on New Zealand society and finding out what the systems are here, and we've just got, as permanent residents, we got the right to vote. So it's a bit like, oh well, we can vote here, but we don't quite know the history, and we're acculturating, we're catching up on that, and both my wife and I are very interested in history, and particularly the bicultural society of New Zealand, which I might talk about more if people are interested. But certainly, we're very mindful of being Northern European immigrants into a society that where the first peoples are Maori, and that puts us in a different. That also puts you in an interesting relationship, and that's part of the history of New Zealand, which they say is one of the oldest lands but the newest countries. In terms of geology, it's very old, but in terms of settlement, it's relatively new.
Yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
Simone's asking an interesting question in the chat room for you. Coming back to the UK, Keith, will it be like coming home, or will it be like leaving your home in
I think
Auckland?
it'll be very much leaving home, and I already feel some sort of sadness and some regret about being away, and something, if you like, some ambivalence about coming back to the UK. But I'm sure when I land and I see people, and somebody said they like hugs, like sort of that's missing that sort of physicality with sort of mates that I've known for years. I'm sure there'll be a sort of sense of home, but I also think there might be a sense of sort of dislocation. I mean, even translating the money back, I'm sort of used to pounds, but I've now got used to dollars, and thinking, oh, what's that in dollars? Because that's what I'm earning, those sort of things. So I don't know. I think I've only used the term going home or home referring to Britain a couple of times. I've been quite struck by how quickly I've sort of assimilated in that sense. But I don't know. I guess that remains to be seen.
Mm.
And as I said, I am interested in this notion of research. There's been quite a lot of research done on emigration, but not much from a sort of heuristic, personal point of view. So I guess that I am interested in that side of things, and those sort of questions I think are very pertinent. When you move, where is home?
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you're settling in and looking forward to your trip, and we're looking forward to having you back in the UK for some of the work
Well,
that you're
thank
going to do. Yeah, so it's great.
you. Look forward to meeting you and other friends and colleagues.
And I guess we've got the